Hi everyone, today is October 7th, 2017, and this is the Duel Assessment, your podcast for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. My name is Green Ranger.
And I'm Deck Tech.
And it's the second week of GX, and an archetype in deck has completely taken over the game right now, and it's actually pretty cool because we were both thinking of ways of playing the deck, playing against the deck, and it's amazing how one deck has completely changed the meta, but that's where we are right now. And of course we're talking about Cyber Angels, and that's what we're going to mostly talk about today. Deck Tech, you've joined the dark side, right?
Yeah, I have, I guess. I took the first couple days of the season just leveling up my, whatever her name is, Boobs? Alexis.
Yeah.
And so that I could get the Petite Angels and the other stuff that she comes with for the deck. And then during this week, I haven't played a ton, but I've played a good amount. And the deck has just been killing it, even with a moderate amount of mirror matches, which in theory would be 50-50, but I like to say, and I think that I do a little bit better than that. I'm still doing very well. I'm at Legend 2 with 34 wins on the season so far. From Platinum, I think I started at Platinum 3 or 4.
4.
Yeah. So at Platinum 4, it took me 18 wins to get to Legend. And at least part of that was because I D-ranked once when I was trying out some Cyber Angel counter decks that didn't end up working out so well. So the Angel portion of the climb has been very streamlined and very successful so far. And when I'm Legend 2 a week into the season, I'm certain that I'm going to get King of Games at some point this season. The shallow reset just really helped out with that. So it's nice.
Definitely.
Looking forward to the Kaiba Cup next month.
Cool.
How about you?
Yeah, I've barely played PvP, mostly because my version of Cyber Angels would never have been complete. I literally just got, within the last half hour, Alexis to 38, so now I have 2 Cyber Petite Angels, but for these other searchers like Senju and Sonic Bird, I only have 1 of each, so it kind of makes me not want to play the deck, but that is the main deck I've been playing so far. I've sprinkled in a little Red Eye Zombies. I'm only at 15 wins. I'm still at Plat 4. Plat 4 is the default King of Games reset rank, and I fell down to 3 once, and it got back to 4, so I'm probably going to play more now that we have a better idea. The idea of the decks are pretty much evolving every single day. We're getting more intel about what the good Cyber Angel decks are and the good counter decks, so once I have a more confident list, I guess, that I will play more PvP.
Right.
Yep.
Cool.
Alright, so we're going to move on to This Week in Esports, and because we're recording this at night, we actually have coverage of the Duel Links Pro Tournament number 7. We were told by Shiny Sophion, who is a player who competed in Decade's tournament and these. She won the 6th Duel Links Pro Tournament, I believe, and she told us to cover these, so we're going to start covering these. A lot of the people who play in this tournament are in Decade's Discord, so they're pretty high level. This one took place today, 64-player double elimination tournament, best of 3. The rules include winning with 2 decks, 2 different skills, 2 different characters, and no side deck. It has a $66 prize pool today, and we have the VOD if you want to check it out. The first place winner is actually a well-known name. He's Koizumi. He represented the EU from Italy, I believe, in the World Championships. And, not surprisingly, he won with 2 Cyber Angel decks. The balanced version had 13. It has an unusual setup. It has 13 monsters and 7 spells, and 6 rituals, which is 3 of each of the Machine Angel rituals, and 1 econ. What do you think about that setup? We typically try to break down like 15, 5, 5. DK did like 20 and 25 and 5, I believe. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so the balance skill, what it does is it makes your starting draw be based on at least that percentage of what the deck is. And so the natural inclination is you're starting with 4 cards, so you want to break your deck up into quarters. And when you have a 20-card deck, that's really easy to do so. But you don't have to do that. And it's funny because we frequently see it as a 10-5-5 or a 15-5 split, and or a 5-10-5. You know, not that it matters to phrase it that way, but the natural way that you would think of it would be monsters, spells, and then traps. You don't have to split it up like that. So when you do this 13-7, what you're doing is you're guaranteeing 2 monsters and 1 spell, and then you have 1 card that is 40% of the time going to be a spell and 60% of the time going to be a monster. And when you are running a ritual deck like this one, what you want in every starting hand, for the most part, is 2 monsters and 1 spell. So I think it was a good call on his part to make it so that the balance gives him what he needs, but then not like force it into a 15-5 setup that would, you know, hurt the deck overall. And the downside of playing more of those spells is that there's this very small chance that that 1 spell that you're going to get is not one of your ritual spells. It could be the 1 econ in the deck. He's minimized that, of course, by making it only 1 non-ritual spell. And you also have that chance of drawing 2 spells. You have the 40% chance of getting the 2 spells in your starting hand. So if that were the case, then you'd have to have a ritual for sure. So what he's doing is he's making a, not so great on math on the fly, but it's a 40% chance that you're guaranteed to have a ritual, and then plus the percentage chance, the 1 in
6 out of 7.
6 for 6 out of 7 for the other draw to be a ritual. So he's got really good odds that he's going to get what he needs, and I like the 13-7 because to me that indicates that he's like decided that this is a better setup than forcing it into the 15-5.
Yeah, I guess having 1 econ as well, he doesn't want to really play reactively. I guess this is the more aggressive one, because if you're playing econ, you're probably behind because they got a monster before you. So this one lets him get ahead, I guess. And the chances of getting the ritual card are pretty high.
Yeah, I mean, I really like econ in the deck as well. I run a restart version, so it's a little bit different, but I have 2 econs in mine, and for a long time I had 3 econs in there, actually. It really helps out with the mirror match, and it's just a solid card. Stealing anyone's monster and then you can use it as part of your ritual fodder is always a nice play, because it's essentially the same as stealing the monster forever. You have a couple guys like the Senjus and the Petite Angels that are really easy to tribute to econ. You don't feel bad about it. And also the ritual monsters that get effects when they are tributed, that's not just tributed for ritual summons, that's also tributed for things like econ. So you can trigger your own effects that way as well. So it's a really good card for the deck.
Right. His second deck was a restart deck, I believe. And it had some interesting cards, including Venu and Primal Cry. So actually, Venu's ritual spell to summon it. And also the tech card of Possess Dark Soul. On this deck, he only had 2 Dakinis. I think that's why he cut out the spot for Venu, but Possess Dark Soul.
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording, and I'm not exactly sure why it's in there. It's a really interesting choice. There's just not that many targets in the current meta that I can think of, especially ones that you would really want. I mean, when Possess Dark Soul was at its strongest was in the Relinquished meta, when stealing someone else's Relinquished was just game-breaking, but we don't really see very much Relinquished these days, so it's a very interesting choice, and I'm I'd love to kind of hear a little bit more about why he decided to go with that.
My theory was just to steal Cyber Petite Angel, but I don't know if that makes sense. It kind of fits in with using their resource, like stealing their resource to get a tribute summon up, but the card itself costs 3 as well, so it's kind of like an even split if it is stealing a Cyber Petite Angel for tributes.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I guess I guess maybe. I personally, the way that I play the deck is I don't usually leave a cyber or it's not. I'm not sure if it's the Petite Angel up. Uh, usually, ever. Usually, I will summon it to get something and then immediately use it as part of ritual fodder or as an econ fodder because you don't want to leave up something with like 300 attack. You'd end up tanking a lot to the face. So. It's very, I mean, obviously sometimes I leave it up, but it's infrequent that I do so. So I'm not sure how often he would get to steal stuff. There's the one card, the Dark Scourge and Rise or whatever.
Right, and Rise, yeah.
Where you can special summon it by removing, I think it's like 1 Fiend and 3 Fairies or something like that from your graveyard. And, I've seen a few versions of Angels run that, but they tend to run Spirit Kuriboh as the Fiend. So it's another kind of interesting thing that, I mean, you saw the deck lists, and I guess he didn't run that in it anyway, but that's maybe one route that people might be interested in pursuing.
Yeah, I guess that's the fun thing about facing Cyber Angels nonstop is just to come up with some secret tech to beat everyone else, I guess.
Yeah,
fun.
I mean, winning the mirror match is particularly, I don't know, satisfying because you're like, yeah, we had the same deck, and it feels like I outplayed you. And outplaying you either in terms of the actual like gameplay or in terms of my preparation by bringing this thing that helped me win some edges in the mirror match. So it was definitely a fun matchup to win, and maybe he's seen something that we're not seeing.
Yeah, it'll be cool to see what the reason is. Second place was Hexter. He brought a balanced control ninja deck, which apparently had 3 econs, 3 ninjutsu, art of shadow stealing, and also floodgate trap hole. He also brought Red Eye Zombie Beatdown. What do you think about ninjutsu, art of shadow stealing?
Seems like a really solid way to counter the Cyber Angels that we're talking a lot about this week. One of the reasons why they're tough to counter is that their own ritual spell protects them from destroy effects. But the ninjutsu art is a banish effect, not a destroy effect. And the downside to it is that when the ninjutsu art itself is destroyed, then the thing that is banished comes back. But I've yet to see a Cyber Angel deck that runs any back row removal, and I've seen a lot of builds of it so far. There's just not very much room in the deck for you to include that, and a lot of back row you really don't care that much about. Instead, there's a little bit of countering back row plays, but there's not very much destroying or tapping down with like Sergeant Electro. So once you get the ninjutsu art off, that Angel's probably gone for the whole game.
Yeah, it's probably better than the Floodgate Trap Hole.
Yeah, I think so. The Floodgate Trap Hole can, in some instances, count as removal for you, but it's not a perfect counter to the Angels because they can just use that Angel as part of their ritual fodder and kind of keep the chain going. And so it's not as powerful as things like ninjutsu are, or a well-timed enemy controller or something like that. We're going to talk all about counters later on in the show, but Floodgate Trap Hole is like a mediocre counter.
Right. Third place is Nameless. Nameless brought a Red Eye Zombie Beatdown deck and Invader Mausoleum. Fourth place was Yay Hey. Also brought Red Eye Zombie Beatdown and the Amazonas Swordswoman Burn deck. It's a really interesting deck that came out just because of Cyber Angels.
Yeah, it's definitely an interesting deck. That's another one that we're gonna highlight a little bit more below. It's kind of considered a Cyber Angel counter. I personally only faced it, I think, twice, definitely once, but it seems a little bit like a meme deck to me. But obviously, Yehei got to fourth place with it in a very competitive tournament with a solid amount of people. So there's probably something there, and if it's in the hands of a good player, it can actually be more than just a meme deck.
Yeah, I think I got beat by it twice in PvP, like with Cyber Angels and with Red Eye Zombie.
Yeah, I mean it has that same surprise factor. Yeah, where you can steal some games just because people don't know how to play against it, or just don't even know what you are. Which a lot of these kind of meme decks have, just like the Titan Showdown deck was, winning for like a day for that reason until people figured out what it was. And what would be the real test as to whether the deck is actually good or not is if it sticks around for another week or two. And then you'll be able to see if, like, oh, okay, this is actually something that you can play in the meta. It's not just, I'm surprising people today with this weird deck that I found online that not too many people are aware of yet.
My Red Eye Zombie also got beat by a Ojama deck.
Well, yeah, if they get their best start, then you literally can't play the game. So there's definitely, I don't know. I'm not sure if that's a meme deck yet either, or if that one's real, but seems interesting.
Yep, I want to play it. And next weekend, the Duel Links Meta Championship number 3 is happening, and they're following a lot of the same rules from the Duel Links Pro tournament with 2 decks, 2 skills, 2 characters. But the kicker is that the prize pool is over $2,000. It's probably going to increase during the event from donations, and we can't wait to report on it.
Yeah, DK always puts on a really good tournament. I really like the kind of role that he's taken on in the community for organizing really high-level play and to putting a spotlight on the top decks and the high-level play and all of that. It's really nice to have somebody like that who's dedicated to it and who's putting $2,000 worth of donations or at least organizing it. Obviously, it's not all his own money, but that's really cool that he's doing that for the community.
It seems like he did like almost all the work, right? to make the competitive scene. It seems like he did a lot. Yeah,
I really think he did. We obviously prior to him, because his main breakout was after the first Kaiba Cup. I think that's when I first heard of him, and probably when most other people first heard of him. And prior to that, we of course had some streamers and stuff putting out some solid content, but he was I think, kind of the starting point of bringing other people into this competitive community by hosting tournaments and stuff like that, instead of just himself being the show, but growing the whole community around him.
Yeah, we actually have people that we have familiar names that we know now. Like, that didn't happen in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we're going to check that out next week. 1.5 experience campaign got extended due to popular demand, so we have more reasons to get our game on.
That's right.
Duel-a-thon. It's been going on. It's kind of like the Rex event where there is the daily meter and then there's a cumulative rewards meter. I think I finished that today, the cumulative rewards meter. And they actually have a multiplier sometimes when you're on a winning streak to help you get by. And they actually gave out a new card this time. And it's a field spell called Wetlands. And what it does is, if any monsters that have 2 stars, or 1 star, or 2 stars or 1 star, are aqua and are water attribute, they gain 1,200 attack points. This made us think of whether it's going to be an Uguchi meta, or Unifrog meta, or Submarine Frog. Submarine Frog's a 1,200 attack. It becomes a 2-star 2,400 attack with piercing. That's probably the best card you could use, but we're only getting 1 copy of Wetlands.
Yeah.
The direct attackers are interesting for the Merrick deck, right? Sort of, but the field kind of depending on the field.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to build a deck around when you only have one field. Obviously, we did that with Toon Kingdom, but it's like a stretch to make it work, and I'm not sure if it's going to happen again. This doesn't seem quite good enough. Toon Kingdom is, of course, like super broken when it gets working, so I don't think this is quite there. One more possibility, though, is if you have used your Hammer Sharks a couple times, then they also get...
Is that fish?
Actually, I don't know. It's only fish, then never mind.
It's a fish. It only helps aquas.
So
there's like the card Jam Breeding Machine, so it makes the tokens.
Hey, there you go.
Slushy gets 1200 attack.
Slushy meta.
Yep. The card flipper campaign. So this is back. One of our favorite events is back, and it comes with a new card called Zor. And Zor is, I think it's identical to Dark Blade, except it can't be used for a fusion. So it's like an 1800 attack Dark Fiend or Warrior. I'm not sure what he is. And we're also getting our third copy of Power Injector. He's a Fiend, so he's an 1800 Fiend with 1500 defense. So he's better than Lajin and Gilgarth and those other guys.
Yeah.
Third copy of Power Injector 2 for Psychic decks. They typically only run 1, so this is just in case a 3 copy Power Injector deck comes out for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good card. It wouldn't surprise me terribly if it happens at some point, but you've played a lot more Psychics than I have.
Right. Yeah. I don't expect it to come, but, doesn't hurt. We're getting a card for free, so I'm not going to complain about it.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yep.
Sorry, I was just going to say the infinite number of 1800 attack Fiend monsters makes me think they're really trying to push a Power of the Dark. I don't know if it's just because they're just trying to help out new players and they know that new players tend to play Power of the Dark a lot, or if they're like actively trying to push it as a top meta deck in something like the form of the old Dino decks, where you're just kind of playing vanilla 4-star guys that are beefy, but that it seems like the days of that type of deck are gone now that we have so many special summons and ritual monsters and everything happening. It's just too slow, so and it's a little bit weird that they just keep giving us these pretty decent 4-star fiends.
And Zor's especially good because he has 1500 defense, and if you flip him, he has 1700 defense with the Power of the Dark field, and that makes him stronger than Sergeant Electro. That's kind of like an old tactic that doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah.
We also got 100 free gems for doing a survey. You should do them anyways. We recently got a survey for the edition of GX World, and it's pretty funny. The first question was, do you enjoy dueling? And everyone should check yes for that one. Or a 5 on the Likert scale, so like way on the right. But there's an extra incentive to do it, and we should tell them that the season ticket rewards should include the URs and SRs from packs, as well as those from farming and events.
Yeah, I think that would be a really cool thing to add to it. I put that I like the rewards that they're offering us, and I do, and I like that they're expanding it as well. But it's very quickly getting to the point where, and it's already essentially there for me, where the gate keys are just meaningless because I don't need to farm anything. So if they're not adding new things to the gates, then there's no reason for me to use the gate keys. And if I already have everything in the gate keys, then right now I have a bunch of season tickets that I'm just kind of waiting for something to come up and for me to need something, because right now there's nothing that I need in the exchange pool. So it'd be cool if they expand a little bit. If you're in the same boat as I am, of course, make sure that at the end of each season you check to make sure you don't have any that are about to expire. But if there's nothing you need, then I think it makes sense to sit on them Both just like in your own personal interest of something might pop up and you need something later, but also they can probably keep track of that type of stuff. And if nobody's using their tickets, then they might notice and they might add more interesting stuff to the pool as well.
You're talking about the 5 ones that they gave for free, right? When GX came out?
I am talking about those, but also like the ones that I got for playing ranked duels last month, this month. I've not really been using my tickets very much. I have mostly just the 5 at this point, because I used some of the ones from this month for Solemn Scolding, I think, and I don't remember. But yeah, mostly just kind of waiting for stuff to come up to get something.
Yep. Alright, we're going to look to the future now, and Bonz is pretty much all but confirmed. He's going to come on the 12th and last till the 20th, so just about a week. Not even Halloween, it's like he's showing up and then he's going to go trick-or-treating. He's gone, I guess. Some of his card rewards, I think all of his card rewards were data mined by XOF, who data mines everything. And I'm going to talk about some of the interesting ones. The UR you get is actually Pumpkin, the King of Ghosts, which would make him pretty much the worst card ever. As a UR. He's worse than Axe Raider because he's just an 1801 tribute, so pretty bad. The ones that I kind of like: Call of the Mummy. This is a continuous spell. Once per turn, you can special summon one zombie monster from your hand. You must control no monsters to activate and resolve this effect.
Cool. Yeah. There's a lot of good zombies, so isn't the Red Eye Zombie is of course a good one.
The Gemini cards like Ill Blood and Heavy Knight, you can use their Gemini ability the next turn, so it's like a free Gemini. And there's also a new card you get from Chaz called Fear from the Dark. It's like 2800 attack or something, but get it for free.
It doesn't prevent you from summoning after that either. Like you can do the Call of the Mummy and then do your normal summon, so that's cool.
Yep. Monster Rebone. This is a continuous trap card. If your opponent special summons a monster this turn, activate this card by targeting one monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your side of the field in defense. When this card leaves the field, banish that monster. When that monster leaves the field, destroy this card. So I thought this card had some interesting things with interfering with their resurrection abilities. If they're trying to bring something back, you would steal it with this card, and you get to banish that card in the end.
Interesting.
Yep. And I thought about how you could use that monster and then use it as econ, like as a tribute for something, but like just banish it for free, I guess. But of course, it's conditional on them having a monster in their graveyard and them special summoning something. So it's specifically against like any of the, I guess ritual summons are special summons, right?
They are, yeah.
Yeah. So it might be a relevant card. Yeah. There are 3 Ghost Trick monsters, and these cards can't be normal summoned unless you control a Ghost Trick monster. And basically, their ploy is that you can switch them to face down defense. So they're kind of like those statue cards that existed before, and they have different effects. The Ghost Trick Skeleton has the ability, when this card is flipped face up, banish cards from the top of your opponent's deck face down up to the number of Ghost Trick monsters you control. So it's like a mill card, but it kind of depends on you having a bunch of these cards on the field as well. And there's a lot of these cards, but they're only giving us 3. And then there's the Castle of Dark Illusions, a card that probably would have been really good back then because it has 1930 defense. 4-star 1930 defense. But it's kind of really old. It gives basically a flip effect. It gives all of your zombies 200 attack for 4 turns. It might be useful for Red Eye Zombie, but I think it's way too slow. You already have beat down to make your Red Eye Zombie stronger. So
yeah. I don't think it'll see much play.
It's one of those cards that isn't divisible by 50.
Yeah, you get some weird stuff with that, and like especially if there's mirror walls involved and stuff like that.
Yep. And then the unlockable GX character in late October, which we think is Dr. Crowler. and his rewards were also data mined by XOF. His decks are mainly the Ancient Gear cards, and these cards basically have the effect of anti-magic arrows. So they declare an attack, and then they can't be countered by spells and traps. That's basically what they do. They have some magic cards that help get out free tribute summons. They kind of recycle their monsters. But the main interesting card is Zero Gravity. Zero Gravity is a trap card that reads, change the battle positions of all face-up monsters on the field. So this is basically your extra Windstorms of Edequa, right?
Yeah, for the most part. It switches yours as well, which is a little bit interesting. But I could see some interesting stuff come from that. Most of the time, it's probably going to be another copy of Windstorm, which is, of course, a very powerful card that's been around since the beginning of the game, and it still sees a moderate amount of play. So, obviously, this would also see at least a little bit of play.
I think it could weed out Curse of Anubis, because that's a card that people mess up all the time, it seems like, and it's basically the second Windstorm.
Yeah, it's true. It's frequently just used as a second Windstorm. So it might be, like you said, it might be a better version.
Yep. Alright, we're going to get to the main meat of today's podcast, which is the Duel School. And I'm going to talk about Cyber Angels. Unless you haven't played the last week, you would know that Cyber Angels are everywhere. They completely reshaped Duel Links, and they're OP. Indubitably OP. People have hit King of Games pretty much right away with like 20 to 30 wins, typically with Cyber Angels or specific counter deck. And here's some main points about the situation if you don't know how important Cyber Angels are. DK mentioned how it is the first trading card game deck. It resembles the card game it is now, which is very complicated, and there's a lot of steps each turn. Duel Links has followed a really conservative release schedule up to now, and they kind of jumped way ahead with Cyber Angels. There are some complaints where Jaden's cards, for example, aren't even seeing play just because Cyber Angels are way ahead of the elemental heroes. You could throw out the meta from the last month mostly. You could forget what were the really where the decks were in respect to each other, because you do have to compare it with Cyber Angels. You're going to see a higher amount of Cyber Angels and counter decks in the high ranks like Platinum and Legend. Probably Legend more than Platinum, but you're going to see a trickle down effect, and you're going to probably see Cyber Angels in Gold just because everyone knows that they're good. Some of the decks are still good, like Red Eyes, and I heard Ninjas are a good counter to Cyber Angels. And Red Eyes, as mentioned, how in the Duel Links Pro Tournament, the second, third, and fourth person brought Red Eye Zombie. So it's still a pretty good deck, but you do have to tech against Cyber Angels if you do want to move up ranks. Your Red Eyes deck is not going to be the same as it was last month. You're going to be with it or against it. If you have the cards, if you have good enough Senjus, there's no reason not to play Cyber Angels. If you don't have the cards, if you want to play a counter deck, you could try to gear yourself up against it, but the Cyber Angels are just really consistent. There's a big range of skill caps. This is really big. It's a really complex deck, so someone like Deck Tech would probably play the Cyber Angels better than me, for example. I played Cyber Angels. I didn't really know what the cards did. I just clicked yes every time. That's not how you. That's not how you move up ranks. You have to know what all your cards do.
You're too kind, and you would have figured it out, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just need to take the time to read them. But the application of the moves aren't you don't click yes every time. You mentioned how you did not activate Takini's effect because you wanted to counter a Divine Wrath once, right? I think you mentioned that. Yeah. So
in the little clip that I put on our Twitter.
Right. So there are specific situations you have to adapt to, and you're not clicking yes on everything. So there's big range and skill cap. Even though I think there is a big enough floor where you could play the deck unoptimally, and you could just get by in Platinum probably. But to get to Legend, you probably need to know what you're doing. And of course, it's a moderately free-to-play friendly deck. The best decks have multiple copies of Senju and some Sonic Birds. but everything else is pretty easy to get. Alexis is get her to level 38, and you get 2 of the Cyber Petite Angels. I farmed her a ton with Dark Paladin, and I got all of the ritual cards. I got all of the Dakinis before she even leveled up, so she's pretty easy to farm. And this combination of things has made it really a powerful force in the meta that has completely changed everything. And it's really powerful and really cheap. So, a fun thing to talk about Cyber Angels is what the optimal duel skill is. No one really knows right now, and they're trying different things. Actually, just to mention, in the Duel Links Pro Tournament, one of the competitors brought life point boost alpha in the Cyber Angels deck.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know why, but there's a reason. So let's talk about some of the popular skills that might show up with Cyber Angels.
Sorry, before you move on, I might know a reason. I know, and I'm blanking on who it was, so I'm sorry to the person, but I was talking to somebody on Twitter about they were using the Fairy Smile, and it's the same idea. You want to gain some life, and the purpose for doing that is so that you can run Solemn Scolding as a protection / counter spell, and the 3,000 life doesn't hurt you as much. So that's why those life gain skills are being experimented with, at least.
Let's talk about the 2 most popular ones. I'd say there's 2 ahead of everyone else so far. So they're Restart and Balance. And they're good. Restart and Balance make it so you can have your optimal hand faster than the other skills, right? I'd say that's
right.
Amazing.
Yeah, we talked about Balance a little bit earlier. And Restart's obviously the same idea. If you don't pick up what you need, then you just send it back, and hopefully you get it on the second time. And as with Balance, you're usually trying to get some sort of like 1 or 2 ritual monsters, usually like a Searcher and or ritual spell, so that you can start the ritual train going on the first turn. The benefit of Restart over Balance, because obviously with Balance you can curate it so that you know pretty much exactly what you're going to get, is that you can make your deck has a little bit more flexibility with Restart, because you don't have to try to fit it within those deck construction limitations, so that you can make Balance do what it needs to do for you.
Right. Master of Rites 2. This skill, you start off with a spell called Ritual Cage, and basically you take no battle damage from attacks involving a ritual monster you control. Additionally, ritual monsters you control cannot be targeted by or destroyed by monster effects.
Nice. Yeah.
That plays around Dakini, I guess.
No, it does not. I don't think, because
effect? No.
right, because Dakini makes you choose one to send to the grave. It's not a destroy, target. Because you can't. Yeah, it's not targeted, and it's not a destroy. I'm pretty sure, because you can't save it with your own ritual.
It's important to read the text. Send a monster to the graveyard. Yep. Wow.
So, I mean, but there are, of course, some monster skills that, or monster effects that sometimes kill, like destroy. So it gives you a little bit of protection. I don't think it gives you a ton of protection against things that are common in the meta, but there's definitely some that you can avoid here. Every once in a while you might see a Yomi ship or something like that. And just because I wanted to make sure I got it. The person I was talking to before about the skills and the life were, the person's name is Hitokiri, I think. And I'm actually not sure if that is a male or a female name. So thank you, Hitokiri, for your insight on the deck. We had a nice little chat about it a couple days ago, 2 or 3 days.
Right. Last Gamble. I guess Last Gamble just gives you like a possible swing turn where you draw a ton of cards and you get like a bunch of Dakinis out, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just if you fall a little bit behind. Because ideally, and with the other skills, you're you're never really behind. But the last gamble might be a nod towards maybe the mirror matches or something, where you think that there's a chance that they might be at parity, and you just kind of want that a little bit of push, like you said, to just get that last final edge.
Beatdown. This is a skill that showed up on Reddit, but has mostly flamed out since, right?
Right, yeah. Early on in this developing meta, which is funny because it's developed a lot over the course of 1 week. So when I say early on, I mean like 4 days ago or something. But it was on the Reddit, I saw it in the Reddit Discord. They were talking about how Beatdown was just hands down the best skill for the deck, and a couple of people were very strongly opinionated as to that. And their reasoning, I guess, was just that since you have so many searchers and so many targets, you don't need one of these hand-fixing skills like Restart or Balance, because you're going to have pretty much a perfect hand every turn anyway, every game anyway. And in the instead of that, you can get some sort of advantage by something like Beatdown, since all of your ritual monsters are 5 stars or higher. They're 6 and 8. You get nice little boosts. Your guys have piercing usually, and in the mirror match, it helps you obviously win those combats. So there was some reasoning to it, but I think it was based on a flawed premise that if you have enough searchers, then you're never going to have a bad hand, and that's just not true. So the other ones have kind of caught up and like you said, surpassed Beatdown as an option.
I remember we were talking about that, and I didn't understand it at all. Like, I was like, what is Beatdown for?
Yeah. I mean, I think it was mostly just for the mirror match. That's what I gotta assume.
Mind Scan. Someone commented like a top upvoted post about Mind Scan reading econs, I think.
Yeah, I mean, one of the most powerful plays with the deck is summon Dakini and get rid of their blocker and summon something else, and you have more than 4,000 attack on the field, so you win. The downside to that is that people obviously very quickly learned to try to counter that. And one of the best counters that you could possibly do is, in response to the ability, you activate Econ and steal Dakini, so that while the ability is on the stack, you steal Dakini, and the monster that you would have had to sacrifice to Dakini anyway, of course you tribute that, but it was going to die. And now you have this Dakini that you get to tribute or whatever, send to the graveyard based on its own effect. And so you're using their own Dakini against them. To summon Dakini, they obviously had to expend some resources, so this is usually a very strong play that can often just turn the game in your favor. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to play the deck in a sec, but one of the things that you do is you're frequently not using Dakini's ability when they have something face down, for fear that it is an econ and it can just break you. And so if you know that it's not an econ, then it gives you a really big advantage, because you can freely use the skill when you need to. Or you can, decide which summons are worth summoning at any given time based on the information that they have in econ there. So I could see it being valuable. Again, it's going under the assumption that your hands are always going to be perfect, which is definitely false, but maybe they're perfect frequently enough that it's, the benefit of having the mind scan skill is worth it overall. I can personally say that I don't very frequently use restart. It's hard. It's always kind of hard to tell, like, well, this is a good hand, but will it be better if I send it back? There very rarely are there just like obviously bad hands where I'm like, okay, well, obviously I'm sending this one back. So there is definitely a little bit of merit to that. discussion about whether you need any sort of hand cure rating at all, and if instead you can get one of these other skills that gives you a different benefit.
It's like, what's the optimal level of greed?
Yes, yeah, exactly. Gordon Gekko.
Another skill, this isn't kind of a lower tier one, extra. I didn't say it like the way they say it in the show, but you basically use it when your life points decrease by 2,000 and you could draw a card that's duplicated. A card you draw is duplicated, so you get 2 of a card.
Right. One of the points here is that almost every attack you take in this current meta is going to be 2,000 or more. Any sort of direct attack, I mean. So there is a very high chance that if you're taking a hit, you get to use this ability, and it's just the ultimate comeback ability, I think. Same idea as Last Gamble, where if you have these extra cards in your hand, then you can have a much bigger swing turn. One point to mention that I kind of wasn't thinking of at the time, but for Last Gamble, is with the Machine Angel Absolute Ritual and with Dakini, you get advantage for having cards in your graveyard. Dakini gets cards from your graveyard back into your hand, and the Absolute Ritual can use the cards from your graveyard as part of your ritual fodder. So the discard portion of the Last Gamble is not a huge downside. It kind of gives you a little bit more room for, I guess, the one-turn kill after that, because you can use those resources that were in your graveyard. I think the Dakini portion of it probably doesn't go into the math too much, because you're trying to win on the turn you Last Gamble, because otherwise there's a very slim margin for you to come back and win after you're only at 100 life.
And Duel Standby, which pretty much gives you an extra card in your hand. Kind of the same thing as Balance and Restart, to have more of the optimal setup in your hand to start off the game.
Right, I think it's for both the optimal setup and just for the fuel, because obviously rituals are kind of expensive in the sense that you need a card. You need to give 2 cards to summon the one, and part of the reason why this deck is good is that you get some of those cards back very frequently, but still it helps when you have more of that fuel to begin with. It's a really good skill for the deck because there's not that many decks out there that can take advantage of it nearly as well as this one can, and we no longer have, I don't even remember what it's called, Revolver Revolution or something, and Reconstructor, and so there's not as much penalty for having a bunch of cards in your hand. The main penalty for it is that at the high ranks, you're going to see a lot of mirror matches, and so you're helping them out as well. And so this is a skill that is good for you because the comparative value is higher for a Cyber Angels deck in that extra card than most other decks. So for like Mill and Burn, it was actually a positive for your enemy to have a card in their hand, because you could it was getting you towards your win condition. That's not the case with this deck. It's not a positive for your enemy to have a card in their hand, but this deck can take better advantage of the card, the extra card, than their opponent can. So it's saying it's not as much of a disadvantage as it could be. And so naturally, when your opponent is playing the same deck as you, that's no longer the case. So Duel Standby is a really good skill, I think, if you're seeing a lot of decks that are not mirror matches.
And as we mentioned before, the life point boosting skills like Life Point Boost Alpha and Fairy Smile. Alright, so we mentioned before how the deck has a really high skill cap to play, and luckily we have a subject matter expert in dueling with this deck. So
yeah, I didn't get my PhD though.
Not like Crowler, no. You got a JD in dueling. Let's just say. No, that didn't make sense. But you're gonna go through a pretty detailed list about how to play a deck, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna try to give you guys a little bit more insight on how to play it. Hopefully, play it at a little bit of a higher level, or if you're trying to play against it, we've got some information on that as well. In addition, just to the value of knowing thine enemy. as it were. So I think probably the most important thing, and we alluded to it earlier, is to just know the deck and to know what the cards do. There are a lot of new cards in the deck, and a lot of them have similar names and similar mechanics, and so it's easy to get them confused with each other, and that's going to hurt you because you can misplay by picking the wrong card, for instance. So we're just going to quickly go through them. The most common list looks like something like 3 Dakini, 1 Ida-10, 3 Ben-10, 3 to 6 searchers. Usually I'm seeing more like 3 though. 2, and the searchers were Senju/Sonicbird. 2 Cyber Petite Angel, 3 Machine Angel Ritual, and 2 Machine Angel Absolute Ritual, leaving approximately 0 to 3 tech/counter/protection card slots. That was weird. Sorry, I lost my place in the notes. Dakini is the boss monster, as it's called, and that's the one we were talking about before. It has 8 stars, 2700 attack, 2400 defense. When ritual summoned, you can choose to make your opponent then choose a monster to send to their graveyard, which is not a destroy effect. It also gives all your ritual monsters piercing, and at the end of each turn, you can add a ritual monster or a machine angel ritual from your graveyard into your hand. And that's only the machine angel ritual, not the absolute. So that's one of those fine points that you need to kind of keep in your memory. Ida-10, 6 stars, 1600 attack, 2000 defense. When ritual summoned, you can add a ritual spell from your deck or graveyard back into your hand. If it's tributed, you can make all your ritual monsters gain 1000 attack and defense. Benton, 6 stars again, 1800 attack, 1500 defense. When this destroys a monster, deal damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's defense, which is a little different than piercing, and in fact it kind of doubles up with piercing, right? Because if you have given it piercing with Dakini and then also Benton kills something, then it's kind of like a double whammy. You get to deal the damage over and then also the damage of the defense, which I guess means you're just dealing the 1800 plus if it has the 1000 boost. If Benton is tributed, you can add a light fairy monster to your hand from your deck. Senju, it's been around forever, everyone knows what it is. The only reminders are that it is a light fairy monster, just like most of the other very commonly used monsters in the deck. Cyber Petite Angel is a 2-star with irrelevant stats. I think it's like 300 or something like that. When it's summoned, you can add a Cyber Angel monster or a Machine Angel Ritual card from your deck to your hand. That means any of your ritual monsters or ritual spell. Sorry, just the Machine Angel Ritual, I think. The Machine Angel Ritual is the normal ritual spell, and it is like a normal ritual. You can get things from the field or from your hand, and their stars have to add up to equal to or greater than the number of stars on the thing you're trying to ritual summon. The upside of it is that if it is in your graveyard and a fairy type monster you control would be destroyed, you can banish it instead to protect that fairy type from being destroyed. It lives. Wow, geez. So, okay, in the section in which I'm telling you to know the cards, I'm actually getting it a little wrong. It's a light monster, not a fairy. So, apologies for that. And the Cyber Petite, I did check, is definitely just the Machine Angel Ritual. So, the Absolute is similar. You can also use it to ritual summon any of the Cyber Angel monsters. but it has to be exact star match, unlike the normal ritual spells, including the Machine Angel ritual. The upside to it is that you can also use monsters from your graveyard to count towards those stars. If you do that, they get returned into your deck, which means you can then search them out later with your searcher cards. It does not have that effect where it can save your light monsters. So, now that we know what all the cards do, there is kind of an ideal opening combo / one specific interaction that is fairly well publicized, but still I see a lot of people not doing it and not aiming towards it, and it indicates to me that it's not as well known as maybe it could be. So, based on everything we just talked about, if you summon Ida-ten by tributing Benton, Ida-ten gets you a spell, and Benton gets you a light fairy. That means that summon of Ida-ten was essentially free, because you are replacing your ritual and your fodder from cards in your deck. So you might as well do that if you can. Frequently, it's the right play to set that up. And in fact, if I'm talking about like the ideal start, you Machine Angel ritual out an Ida-ten by tributing Benton, and then that allows you to grab a Machine Angel Absolute ritual and a Petite Angel. You then summon the Petite Angel and find Dakini, use the Absolute ritual, tributing the Petite Angel and shuffling back in your Benton to summon your Dakini, clear away whatever they had played, and then attack with Dakini and Ida-ten for lethal, 4,300. So there's a pretty easy one-turn kill in this deck if all of those things align. And it includes taking advantage of that free ritual summon if you can. So it's really important to figure out how you want to use your searchers. Obviously, one really easy way to figure out what you want to search for is whatever the next step is on that combo. So if you already have Benton, you can look for Ida-ten. Or if you are at the stage where you're summoning your Petite Angel to find Dakini so that you can Absolute Ritual him out, then obviously you're looking for either Dakini or the Absolute Ritual. And that's based on what you have in your hand, what the board state is. Aside from that, like very kind of specific line of play, it's a little hard to say that you always want this or always want that. So you want to keep in mind whether you've regular summoned for the turn, whether you can do your ritual summon without pulling the graveyard, because that determines whether you get the absolute or the not, whether your stars line up for whatever you're trying to regular summon, because that's necessary for the absolute ritual, and if you want to make any particular skills go off, effects go off. So if you obviously want a comes into play effect to go off, then you're going to try to aim for summoning that person. Whereas if you want a tribute effect to go off, you want to use that one as fodder, and you want to figure out a way to use that one as fodder. But if you're ever unsure and running out of time, the numbers are getting red and it's scaring you, usually the best, safest overall pick is Petite Angel, because that can then let you pick later, pick something else. And the deck does not have that many normal summon monsters in it, so you will frequently have a chance to play another normal summon. If not on this turn, then on the next turn, you won't usually have your normal summon stepping on each other's toes. So a Petite Angel is usually a safe pick. We talked about a little bit earlier, but one of the key things to keep in mind is when you want to use Dakini's summon ability. As we mentioned and alluded to, and are going to talk about more below, enemy controller is one of the most both powerful and common counters to Cyber Angels. In fact, I think that Konami had an idea as to how powerful the Cyber Angels were going to be, and that's why they gave us enemy controller, everyone another copy for free. They gave us a bunch of SR tickets so we could pick up more enemy controllers, And they gave us the last set had Horus in it, which is going to be another of the counters that we're going to be talking about. So I think they were kind of setting it up so that there were some counter plays in the meta, and I'm not sure if they wanted the Cyber Angels to be overly powerful, but I think they wanted at least some of those counter plays to be there. But anyway, off the rails a little bit. If you activate your Dakini, they can steal it and then kill it with its own ability, which can just really ruin your whole setup. So usually, if my opponent has a face-down spell or trap, I won't activate the ability unless maybe I'm going for lethal or I can afford to lose my Dakini. You kind of have to treat it as though it's an enemy controller and just say, okay, since I'm going for lethal here, it's worth the risk. Or if it's enemy controller, then I'm okay with it, and if it's not, then awesome. Every once in a while, you can figure out that it's not an enemy controller just based on the way they're playing. For instance, they didn't like steal your guy and attack in for lethal or something like that. There's always a few tells, and obviously in those cases, if you can just read their hand and know that it's not an enemy controller, then you don't treat it as though it's one. And one last point is Dakini's end turn ability. Once you hit yes to use the ability, it doesn't allow you to change your mind, which means the options are then shown to you, and if the only option is a Machine Angel ritual, then you might have messed up, because sometimes you want to keep your Machine Angel ritual in the graveyard so that it has some protection for your guys. So you need to check before you hit the end turn what's in your graveyard and which targets are available for Dakini. Dakini cannot get back a Machine Angel absolute ritual. So you have to look at the ones that are actually targetable. One of the hardest plays, I think, in the deck is trying to predict when it's more beneficial to have the Machine Angel ritual in your graveyard as a possible protection effect, versus when you want to pull it out of your graveyard for a whole turn without any protection, but so that next turn you can do a ritual summon. And it's something that if you're just clicking yes on every single activation, you're not giving enough thought to. So moving on to countering Cyber Angels, and you can feel free to jump in here too. I feel like I've been talking a while. So.
Oh, yeah, I'll go ahead, yeah. So there's a lot of decks designed to counter Cyber Angels, and some of them have favorable matchups against Cyber Angels. The problem is that these decks might be more expensive than Cyber Angels. We mentioned before how you could get a lot of the cards for free or for farming. Another problem is that the decks aren't that good against the rest of the decks that aren't Cyber Angels. We could be overblowing how many Cyber Angels there are, but would you say it's probably less than half, right? Definitely.
For me, it's definitely been less than half. Some of the people who are grinding really early in the season, because I still think it's pretty early in the season, but the people who are getting King of Games on the first day or two, they said that like every single person in Legend was playing Cyber Angels. And that's definitely not true from my experience so far, but maybe those like super try-hard people in the first couple days, they all were. So the meta is going to continue to shift. I think at this point, we might be in the low point as the number of Cyber Angels. I would imagine that maybe it's like the most informed and try-hardiest people would all be playing Cyber Angels, and then all of those people will get to King of Games or get tired of it or whatever, and then there's kind of this lull where only 40% of us are playing it, 30% of us are playing it, and then eventually the news will kind of get out to a larger portion of the player base that the deck is super good, and then it'll have like a resurgence in a little bit more popularity. So I expect that maybe presently and for like another week or maybe more, it'll be a little bit lower, and then it'll pop back up again unless there's some new cards that change things up more than that natural kind of flow.
It's the Oguchi Wetlands decks. They're going to take over.
That's the one.
Anyways, so you're tired of playing Cyber Angels. Here are some of the decks you could play: Horus, I've seen different horse decks. Someone tried to build like a fire beatdown version, but I think the best version has Kinmodo Dragon and Dust Knight, which lets you get out the level 6, I believe, and then you could kind of level him up to level 8. And once you get level 8 out, you pretty much just win because you can negate every single ritual summon your opponent throws out at you.
Right. And we talked about it a little bit, but Cyber Angels don't really have very much room for counterplays or tricks. Once the horse is out, the only things that really beat it are things like Mirror Wall or Windstorm, and then attacking into it. And earlier on into the Cyber Angel meta, we saw a moderate amount of those, but now we're almost seeing none of them. And they might have to come back if the horse decks come a-knocking.
The deck we talked about before, the Amazoness Swordswoman. And if you're not familiar with this card, it basically has the effect your opponent takes any battle damage you would taken from battles involving this card instead. So this card is good just because Dakini allows your ritual monsters for piercing damage. So you're going to take Swordswoman has 1600 defense, so you're probably taking like 1000 plus. With Idaten it's 2000, so it's probably like 2000 damage. And sometimes they even ram this purposefully into your monster.
Right, I was going to say they also do things like, what's it called, Monster Morph or Mega Morph it, so that your guy gets
Massive
twice
morph.
as big. Yeah, there you go, Massive Morph. They'll make your guy twice as big so that it's a one-turn kill, or they will use Half Shut on their Amazoness, which is nice because A, it gives more damage, and B, it lets them use the Amazoness again. So, again. So there's a lot of... they get a lot of use out of it, and like you said, because there's that piercing damage, it's hard for you to avoid it. You can't just like attack them when they're in defense position or anything like that.
Yep. Dark Paladin decks. This is kind of similar to Horse, except you have to discard a card to negate the spells. It's a little easier to get out than Horse because you could just fuse 2 cards. You could have Dark Magician or Buster Blader and then one of those Flex Fusion Material guys. And then you pretty much negate all of their ritual spells. But it's more of a card commitment.
Because of that discarding, yeah. So, and because of how you summon it with the fusion. But I think it's cool that you can pretty much guarantee that you get a Dark Paladin on turn 1 using the balance skill. So there's a lot of, it's a bit of a safe bet. If the Cyber Angels goes first, they frequently don't like to go all in on the first turn. They like to kind of go all in after you've played something, so that you don't have as much time to react to it all, and they can kind of kill you in one turn. And so you can usually get down the Dark Paladin before they do. And they're not frequently going to have more than like 2 rituals in their hand at any given time. So you can usually kind of just shut down for at least 1 turn, and then obviously every turn you just draw and don't play things until you have enough that you can counter their rituals the whole game.
Red Eye Zombie with proper teching. We're going to talk about tech cards, but Red Eye Zombie is still pretty good. There's a lot of room for tech cards now. I think I've seen Lava Golem and Floodgate Trap Hole as the most common techs with Red Eye Zombie, but you could pretty much flex anything in any of the cards we'll talk about in a second. Red Eye's Balance. Champion's Vigilance would be pretty good, especially on Senju. Pretty much ends the game for them because they're just left with a 1400 attack monster right there. And waiting for the counter. Yeah, go ahead.
It counters and destroys it. So the Senju goes away and they don't get the search effect. So it kind of just leaves them wide open. And the countering the search effect is a really big deal because usually when you're playing the rituals, you have you've kind of got it all lined up where like, okay, this one's going to go here, and then I'm going to use this fuel to do this, and then I'm going to search out that with this thing. So often if you can get rid of just that first search, then they're like, oh, okay, I can't do anything this turn. Sometimes it doesn't work for you, of course, because they'll have that, kind of backup plan. But if you can get the Champion's Vigilance or even 2 down on that first turn, then you are in an amazing spot to just take that game home.
And finally, the Monarchs, which are Angmarl, the Fiendish Monarch, I believe. He's the only one we have in the game. And this deck naturally runs 3 enemy controllers and 3 soul exchanges, which are pretty good against the Cyber Angels. And, of course, Angmarl lets you recycle the cards. You get to use the cards back against the spell cards.
Yeah, it lets you grab more of them. So we just keep talking about enemy controllers, but it's just a really great counter. Soul Exchange is another good one because when you tribute them, it's not a destroy effect, so they can't save it by the ritual. And that's kind of the whole recurring theme about a lot of these tech cards and counter cards and counter decks is that you need to find a way to destroy their ritual guys without actually using destroy effects because they can't protect against the non-destroy methods of killing their things.
Yeah, that's a pretty good point. And we're going to go through some of the tech cards that we've seen quite a bit. First and foremost, enemy controller. We've said this many times, but you get to steal. If you use the steal ability, which is the second ability, instead of changing battle position, you could take their Dakini and let them use it to send it to the graveyard, not destroy it. That gets around the Machine Angel Ritual Protection in the graveyard. It's probably the best card, and as Deck Tech mentions, we've gotten probably 4 copies if you played the game long enough.
Yeah.
So
another thing with enemy controller is since a lot of the Cyber Angel players are kind of playing around it by not using Dakini's ability, just having anything set will sometimes protect your guys. And having enemy controllers, even if you don't get that backbreaking play of stealing their Dakini to kill it with itself, sometimes you can steal something to just attack for the win, like the next turn, because the Cyber Angels don't have very many back row protective type plays of their own. So if you just take one of their guys and attack through for over 4,000 damage, then that's game right there.
And just as a joke, you're a 90s kid when you have a prismatic enemy controller.
It's true.
I think so. Floodgate Trap Hole. I think this card gets a lot of attention just because it was kind of a prize of the newest booster pack, but it is a kind of a mediocre counter in the end. It can prevent the enemy from getting a one-turn kill, and sometimes gets you enough of a window to catch back. But sometimes, most of the time, the Cyber Angel can just use that Dakini or whatever was set face down as another tribute.
Yeah, the Floodgate Trap Hole is best when used on the last monster in their kind of chain of ritual summons. If they're doing a couple, because if you do it on any monster in the middle of the chain, then it doesn't really do anything, because like you said, they just use that as part of their ritual for the next one.
Magic Drain, it's a free negation of the ritual spell, but sometimes they have extras in their hand, and they could just send that to the graveyard, which, as we mentioned before, it provides protection for the Cyber Angels, and they could be brought back to the hand at the end of the turn.
Mm-hmm.
Divine Wrath, it's more of a reactive counter where you try to use it on a monster's ability, like Dakini. So you destroy her, I think, right? Or is it a destroy effect?
Yeah, it's a counter and destroy.
I think the best use of this counter is against the Searcher, so you pretty much, it's kind of like the Champion's Vigilance, where you destroy it and leave them with nothing on the board, and they don't get any card in their hand.
Yeah, usually that's the right play. It's a little, unfortunately for the person who's facing the Angels, it's a little hard to tell, because sometimes that would just be like a waste, because if they already have what they need in their hand, they were just kind of going for extra gas or setting up a future turn. It's just hard to tell, but I think usually the correct play is to get rid of that first searcher if you can.
Cursed Seal of the Forbidden Spell. This is a farm card from Bastion, and I could tell you, I got 3 of these in an hour, so it's pretty easy to farm Bastion. Less than an hour, probably. It's typically better than Ultimate Providence or Spell Shield Type 8, and the problem with it, though, is that there are 2 ritual spells for Cyber Angels, so if you negate one, they could probably use the other, except it's probably better to negate the basic spell, because the Absolute Ritual has more conditions to activate the ritual.
Yeah, and there's also usually more of the basic one, so you're countering more things. And just in case people don't have this card yet, it is a trap card. It says, I think, discard one of your cards to negate a magic card, and also your opponent can't, or that card can't be played for the rest of the game, or something like that.
Yeah, it's free. It's 2 abilities, basically. The free one is a target ability, so you can negate a target spell for free, but any other spell you need a discard. So, Ultimate Providence, it's flexible because you could kind of negate the Monkster ability or the spell, but it's situational because you have to have that card in your hand, the Monkster or spell. Spell Shield Type 8, against Cyber Angels, it provides a free negation of a target spell. Oh wait, I think I read Spell Shield Type 8 as Cursed Seal.
Oh, yes, yeah. The Cursed Seal is the one that prevents them from playing the same name for the rest of the game. Yeah.
Yeah. So Spell Shield, you need to discard a card to negate the ritual spell. But it's worse because you could still, if you have 2 Machine Angel rituals, you could just play a second one. Yeah,
what I like about the Spell Shield Type 8 is that it's actually like it in the Cyber Angels deck to protect against my opponent's enemy controller plays, and to kind of win the mirror match and stuff through the ritual spell. So I just added one of those to my Cyber Angel deck in place of where some people put the Solemn Scolding.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is a farming card. I know you get one for free for Alexis. I forget if it's I think it is a farming card as well. And then some of the monsters and spell cards. DD Warrior, which is pretty much a free banish ability when they attack it. Lava Golem. Typically you have 2 Cyber Angels out, so you sacrifice their Lava Golems. It gets around the Machine Angel Ritual ability, I believe, because it's a sacrifice, not a destroy effect. Soul Exchange, same thing. And Relinquished, it turns them into a magic card, so they are not destroy effects.
Right. The problem with these is that they kind of tend to be a little bit slower than the Cyber Angels. Cyber Angels, you're putting out 2, maybe even 3 guys on one turn. So you kind of need everything to line up well for the Lava Golem, Relinquished, Soul Exchange type stuff to kind of keep up. But it's definitely an option, one that I'm going to explore a little bit once I kind of make that King of Games push.
And combat trick traps generally. Cards like Windstorm and Mirror Wall are imperfect counters, but they prevent one-turn kills, and they sometimes give you an opening to attack the angel multiple times, like you pay for the Mirror Wall, basically. And you could pretty much exhaust their Machine Angel rituals from their graveyard. They keep taking damage, and then they finally die.
Right, so if you kill the angel multiple times, then eventually it will stay dead because they'll run out of the rituals. So things like Mirror Wall, the angels are really good against Mirror Wall because it won't automatically kill your angel, but like you said, if you just pay to keep up the Mirror Wall, and then you can then attack into the angel a couple more times in the next turn. They only have 3 of the rituals. It seems like it's infinite, but they only have 3, so they can only protect their guys up to 3 times.
we talked a lot about Cyber Angels today. Do you have any final thoughts, like Jerry Springer would say at the end of his show? Do you have any final thoughts? I mean, it seems like they're really daunting, but it seems like if you're committed enough to play Counterplay or to play Cyber Angels, if you want to join them, that they could be beat. I feel like there's enough counters.
Yes, I think that it is definitely the best deck in the format, and it is definitely shaping the format. But I think all of those counters, and there are a good amount of them, make it not unbeatable, and they make it so that you can still play other decks. And the Angels are actually they're very redundant, and they have like internal protections just based on the cards, like of course the Ritual and Dakini getting pieces back. So it's kind of resilient just in its own right. But at the same time, it's pretty fragile because usually on a turn when you go off, you end the turn with no cards in your hand. So if your opponent can mess you up, then they can sometimes just win based on that one key swing turn or just based on you being out of resources. And so I don't think it's broken the game yet, but it's hard to say because when we saw that pocket of people at the highest level competing to get King of Games on that first day, they said that every single person was running Cyber Angels. So if this meta persists through the Kaiba Cup and we see the same thing in Kaiba Cup where everyone's running Cyber Angels, then obviously we will have a problem. But I think at this point, we don't yet have a problem. We just have a best deck. And there's always going to be one best deck. Before Cyber Angels, it was Red Eyes. Or, well, before the Cyber Angels, immediately before it, there was maybe Tomb Barrel Dragon, and then before that, it was Red Eyes. But there's always going to be one best deck, and there's always going to be people online hating it, but it's normal. And I do think that Konami has taken those steps that we talked about, giving everyone an enemy controller, making other enemy controllers really easy to come by, making the most recent set have Horus, and we didn't specifically mention him, but the Swamp Thing that was also in the Horus set that helps out with the fusions.
Right.
All of these help the various counters, and so I think they knew what they were doing when they made Cyber Angels a really good deck and gave us a few tools to play against it. And just to wrap up my babbling, I really like that Cyber Angels is cheap to build and it's not restrained by like RNG. Because the problem with Red Eyes was that if you weren't lucky, then you didn't get the insights, at least for a long time. And if you didn't have a lot of money, you couldn't play the Red Eyes Zombies version. You had to play the basic Red Eyes, which I did, and I did well with, and other people did as well. But it felt like you weren't allowed to play the best deck because either you weren't putting money into the game or you weren't lucky. And neither of those are the case with Cyber Angels. So I like that you can play the best deck in the game just by being devoted to the game enough to level up character to 38 and to buy, like, save enough gems to buy through a set a couple times to get yourself a couple Senjus. And it feels better to me than how Red Eyes felt. And even Tomb Barrel Dragon, some people couldn't get their hands on 2 or 3 copies of it, so they couldn't really play that best deck either. So I guess that's my final thoughts.
Wonderful. And we're going to see a lot more of this deck in the coming week of PvP. We're probably going to talk about something else next week, but the meta is probably going to be a little bit different, where we can kind of report on a change, or if it remains the same next week. So we're going to wrap it up for today. Thanks for listening. We're going to give a shout out to Shiny Sophion. She invited us to the Duel Links Pro Tournament Discord, and I'm seeing a lot of cool decks. It's just cool to see the tournament decks that they post there, and to interact with some of the people in Decade's Discord. We're kind of interacting with them intermediately through a tournament Discord, but, you know, same thing.
Yeah.
You can find this on the App Store, Google Play, Stitcher, and other podcast searchers. Check out the podcast and more at the duelassessment.wordpress.com. Find their YouTube channel. listen to this there and stare at the picture of a screenshot for an hour. Help support us. Help Deck Tech buy Mike. Help us buy cards. Patreon.com/duel_assessment. Send us an email if any questions or concerns you have at the duelassessment@gmail.com. Or you can find us where we're always at Twitter, duel_assessment, me at Green Ranger HS, and Deck Tech at HS Deck Tech.
Yeah, man, you're just full of jokes tonight.
Yeah.
You and your sexy voice.
Yeah, and the alcohol. Yeah. Oh, you gotta make this like an 18+ now because I mentioned alcohol.
Is that the rule?
Maybe. Yeah, I would like to.
Okay.
Alright, enjoy playing Cyber Angels or against them.
Yep. Good night, guys.